Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. At times this can be a good thing, but when it comes to your finances, it's important to spot potential issues before they become a big problem. That's today's topic, 5 potential financial problems. Let's jump in.
It's time for the My Retirement Clarity Podcast with Lee Perkins, financial planner and president of J.L. Perkins Wealth Management. Get ready for a good dose of inspiration, simplicity, implementation, and of course, clarity on how to successfully prepare for retirement and grow and preserve your wealth. Here's Ben George with Lee Perkins.
Well, glad to have you back on My Retirement Clarity alongside Lee Perkins, owner and financial advisor over at J.L. Perkins Wealth Management there in Macon. I am Ben George. Got a good show for you today. We're talking about some potential warning signs, right? So if you are someone that maybe doesn't stay on top of things all the time with your finances, or maybe just don't take a close look all the time, there's 5 potential financial problems that we want to identify today for you and help you make you aware of those, and help you push you to maybe sit down with an advisor and take a look at them if any the red flags are raised along the way today. So it should be a good show today, Lee. I know it's always important to try to get ahead of these things as much as possible, right?
Yeah. And sometimes, like I said in the intro, you don't know what you don't know. And so sometimes you need somebody to kind of help you with that. So that's what we'll jump into today.
All right, should be a good show. Before we do that, I want to do a little getting to know you. I don't think we've done this in a little while, Lee, asking you a question away from finance and to get to know a little bit better. I know you've been spending a lot of time on the home building process, maybe more than you had hoped, right? So I want to ask you, as whether this can relate to your new house or, just where you live now, what's the favorite room in the house for you?
Well, so because, we've been building the house now for a long time, and we're 3 to 4 weeks from being in the house, I'm going to talk about what my favorite room is going to be, and it's going to be the back deck of the house. It's a big back deck overlooking the river. We've got a big ceiling fan up there. We'll figure out a way to put a nice TV out there, but that by far is going to be my favorite room in the house, even though it's right outside of the house. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. It's been a long time coming, but hopefully if everything is on track, we'll be in the house by Thanksgiving.
Nice. A big screened in patio?
Well, no, it's not going to be screened in, so we'll have to fight with the bugs, but I think we can use some citronella candles and, when that time comes. So we do have some invisible creatures here that like to snack on you. So a covered patio area, but not screened in. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. That's so nice. And it's always great to spend some time out there, especially this time of the year, football season, cooler weather. I'm sure you can already kind of picture yourself and the family out there on the patio. So hopefully it all come together here soon.
Yep. Hope so. I hope so.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing that. Again, if you have questions today on the show as we go through it, I always encourage you to just visit talkwithlee.com. Very simple, very easy way to get on Lee's schedule, and you can go through anything we talk about here on the show today or any questions you have with your financial plan. All right, we got 5 potential financial problems that we want to identify today for people. And again, kind of like when you're driving around the car and a warning sign, that light comes on, it may not mean anything's wrong, but it might mean that, hey, let's go sit down with someone, a professional, and have them examine it just to kind of assess everything and see what needs to be done. So the first potential financial problem that you might have is if you're someone that doesn't have any idea what it's going to cost to fund your lifestyle. And I know we talked about this a little bit before, Lee, but this can be a big problem.
Yeah, this is really a critical piece of information that I think everybody should know. But the reality is that I think while working, most people really don't have an idea of how much they spend every month. They may have a ballpark idea, but I think if they had to guess, sort of like the Price is Right, they'd be off by a pretty good bit. And I think this is just because people, certainly because most of the people that we meet that come in the office while they're working, they're making, way more money than they spend. And so there's plenty of cushion. So there's really no reason for them to do a budget, or as I had a buddy of mine tell me this week, he calls it a budget. It's a fancy way of saying a budget, I guess. But anyway, it can really be an eye-opening experiment for some folks to sit down and figure out exactly how much money they spend every month. And I'm not saying that spending a lot of money is a bad thing. If you make it, enjoy it. And as long as you're saving for a time in the future when your salary goes away, spend it. That's fine. Keep the economy going. That's, we need consumers who are consuming. And that's certainly what we feel like we're doing right now on this house building project. But I would tell you that in my experience, once people have settled into retirement for a while, they pretty much have a better idea of their expenses month over month. And this is usually because they've been forced to because of the change in their income. The paycheck stops. They got to look at their budget or their budget, at least when they first retire, because the main reason is they have to determine how much money they need to take from their assets every month. So this sort of, forces them to do that. There's a whole lot that goes into retirement income planning. It's just way more complex than living on the interest. And unfortunately, that's the answer that I get 80 to 85% of the time when I ask somebody who comes into my office for the very first time, what's their plan for income in retirement? They say, hey, I don't want to touch the principal. I just want to live on the interest. So remember, the interest or the earnings that your money really has nothing to do with your expenses. So make sure you zero in on those expenses prior to retirement.
Hey, whatever you got to call it, Lee, to actually push you to take that step and get it done, you can call it whatever you want to, right?
That's it. Sometimes I refer to it as the B word because nobody wants to talk about the B word. But, I like the budget.
I like that too. All right. So that's the first potential financial problem we want to talk about. All right. Second one here. I know a lot of people look at their accounts and say, hey, I just want to, if I can hit $1 million, if I can save $2 million, whatever that number is, people just get hung up on their net worth and what those account balances are, rather than focusing on the income they can actually generate from that money.
Yeah, this is a trap that a lot of people fall into all the time. And I think our industry does a lot to perpetuate this, kind of what I call the balance trap. I want people to look beyond the statement. I think years ago, and we've talked about it on the show, one of the investment companies, and I don't remember which one it was, they did a commercial that showed people walking around a crowded city street and dragging behind them a giant number. And of course, that number represented their retirement account balance. And, like I say on this show almost every week, your ability to retire and live like you want to live in retirement is not just about how much money that you've saved. So it's not about that big number that you're dragging about. It's just as much about, or even more about, how much you spend. It's certainly not a popular concept, but I don't think we'll see a commercial with people dragging around their monthly expense number, because that's not as marketable of an idea as an account balance is. Mm-hmm. So, again, you want to retire with as much money as possible, but don't make that the focus. The net worth, that's another one that gets me. Sometimes I'll meet with people and they'll tout, what their net worth is. They're really proud of that number. But, unless you're using that net worth statement or some type of balance sheet for collateral, for something, I don't really know what good it serves 98% of the people that are out there. So yeah, net worth, I just don't pay too much attention to it. But I think real quick, Ben, getting back to the original point, and you addressed it, focusing on an account balance. I would really caution people against striving to reach a certain dollar amount threshold. People set that $1 million goal, as some kind of goal all the time for some reason. I think it just because $1 million sounds cool, and they think, hey, once I get to $1 million, I've made it, or I'm in the club, or whatever that threshold is. But I can tell you from my experience watching people cross $1 million or $3 million or $5 million, when I ask them if they feel different than they did the day before they crossed that threshold, they tell me that they feel exactly like they did before they got there. So they tell me it's really sort of a letdown. So, just make sure you're financially prepared, and having $1 million or $3 million or whatever it is, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're financially prepared.
And, too, the other thing on that, Lee, is that with an account balance, you might see one number, but what you actually get to put your hands on in retirement could be a completely different thing. And that's exactly why you talk taxes so often, because without positioning yourself as efficiently as possible now, you might not have nearly as much money in retirement as you expect.
Yeah, I kind of ask the question pretty frequently. Somebody shows me a statement and just say they have $1 million. And I say, well, how much money do you have? And they'll say $1 million. And I'm like, no, you really don't have $1 million, because the IRS has a lien on that $1 million account. So you may have 700,000 or 750, whatever it is. So I tell that story just to get the point across that if the IRS, if you've got a qualified account and you owe taxes on that account, all that $1 million is not yours. The IRS has a lien on that. And so, this is probably a good transition into the book that we talk about all the time on this podcast, Diffuse. It's a book that we've written to give people strategies to address the likelihood of increasing taxes in the future. And so if you want a copy of this book, and Ben, we've been giving this book out for maybe over a year now, just text the word diffuse, DEFUSE, to 478-475-2050. Give us a good mailing address and we will ship that out to you at no charge. It's just a good way for you to be better prepared for taxes in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Please take advantage of that. A lot of people have, and we've gotten some good feedback on that. So, again, take advantage of that book offer. All right, we got a few more potential financial problems here. And the next one is the mental image of retirement you might have. So some people, if they haven't sat down with an advisor and really laid out a plan and seen all that goes into it, a lot of the details and a lot of the different areas that you have to cover, they might think, well, I can kind of do things similarly to what my parents did, but things have changed a lot now, Lee, and having that vision of retirement like your parents probably isn't going to work for you.
Yeah. I think what we've seen our parents do, it really does have an impact on our expectations for retirement. Just kind of their experiences sort of become our experiences. Both of my parents retired early. My dad retired at either 54 or 55, and my mom was about 56, 57. I can't remember for sure. And so to me, that's pretty young, because I'm 52, so I'm just behind those ages. And I think, certainly there are people that retire much earlier than that. I did an interview on this podcast months ago with a client couple of mine, Joe and Suzanne Best. They're clients of mine, have been for a long time. And I think Joe retired at age 50. And for me, that's crazy to think about, because I'm 52 and they even had a daughter in college at the time, but they were able to pull it off. And so for me, just because my parents retired early, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm entitled to that same outcome. My parents' situation was different. They both had pensions, not huge pensions, but they worked hard and sacrificed along the way. They sacrificed financially, probably way more than what I've done. Could I have set things up for me to retire early at, 54, 55 years old? Possibly, but I would have had to have made a lot different choices over the last 10 to 15 years. And that was really never my goal. But talking about retiring early, that's one mental picture that maybe people out there think about. But there are other folks that maybe saw their parents work until they were really old, maybe even working until they passed away, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. And so now those folks are probably wanting to do everything that they can do right now to avoid that same outcome. That's certainly not what I want to do. It's probably not what anybody wants to do, but you've got to determine what's best for you and plan accordingly. You don't have to do exactly what your parents do. Do what's right for you. Plan accordingly. Enjoy life now. Save some money for the future and retire when you're ready. Hey there, sorry to interrupt the show, but I wanted to take just a quick second to tell you about our new e-newsletter called Uncommon Sense. Now I know the last thing you probably want is another email from a financial firm giving you the same old industry jargon that every brokerage firm out there gives you. I get it. Nobody wants that stuff because it's boring. But our newsletter is anything but boring. Information plus entertainment is infotainment. And that's the goal. And that's what Uncommon Sense is. So we want to inform you in a very entertaining way, so you'll get stories of how financial planning works in the real world and not some corporate boardroom of a Wall Street firm. You'll also get access to a lot of other great resources. So just head on over to our website, www.myretirementclarity.com, and click on the Uncommon Sense logo. Just put in a good email address and you'll be good to go. Now, back to the show.
Next one up here, Lee, current events. Current events is something that has been kind of bogging us down quite a bit, right? I mean, the world news is all over the place, both at home and abroad. But what we want to talk about is how do you feel about that news, right? So if you're someone that gets worked up quite a bit because of everything that's happening and the resulting impact it has on your bottom line, essentially, right? The volatility in your portfolio, then that could be a sign that maybe you don't have the best mix of investments, possibly, right?
Yeah. Now, Ben, is there something going on that I don't know about? I'm not hearing anything in the news.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. You can't turn on the news right now without getting bad news. And to me, losing sleep is really a sort of a telltale sign that you've got too much risk in your retirement portfolio or whatever it is that you have. And people ask me all the time, what's the best investment strategy? And I tell them the same thing. It's the one that you can stick with in up markets and in down markets. But there is an enemy out there lurking, and that enemy sabotages our way of thinking. And that enemy is us. And it's because our emotions play tricks on us. And sometimes it is a real battle. It really is. It's a battle between what we know we should do and what our mind tells us is going to happen. And certainly the news doesn't help one single bit. I've even had people recently ask me if I think their account is going to go to zero. Of course it's not. The only way somebody's account could go to zero is if you've got all your money invested in one company and maybe that company goes belly up. But all of our clients are well diversified, so nobody has everything in one company. And everybody knows that markets are cyclical and they go up and down. But when we listen to what's going on in the news and what we're hearing with inflation and if we think we've got the leader of the free world with dementia, and sometimes we're not sure if he's talking clearly. And then on top of that, you throw in all the political ads and you might think that your account's going to go to zero because we think the country could possibly go out of business. But, we know that's not going to happen. It's not a lot of fun right now, but it is part of the process. So what I would tell people, if what's going on right now is keeping you up at night, maybe it's time to adjust your strategy to one that you can live with. It doesn't mean you have to throw in the towel and move everything to cash and sit in your basement scared of the world. I've had several clients want to adjust things in recent months, and that's okay. The whole purpose is we want to make sure that you can sleep at night, but certainly don't try to day trade and don't try to time the markets. That's a losing proposition because nobody has a working crystal ball. So again, make sure your strategy is aligned with who you are. Long term, know that what we're going through right now is temporary. And, at some point, this too shall pass, and we will see increasing markets at some point. We just don't know when.
Yeah, who knows when, but we do know that it's not always different this time like we like to think. So good one to remember there. All right, last one we have here on our list for potential financial problems that could exist for you is if you think that your nursing home expenses will just kind of take care of themselves because you have a large nest egg or you have a long-term care policy in place, but that doesn't mean that your entire healthcare plan is necessarily taken care of, right?
Right. Yeah. And this is a tough one for me because it's really just impossible to know how much care is going to cost in the future. So it makes it really difficult to plan ahead. The cost for this type of care goes up every single year, and it really has for a long time. And every once in a while I'll meet somebody, they'll come into our office and, they got $400,000, $500,000 and they tell me they're just going to self-insure. That could certainly work out, but it really depends on the level of care that somebody might need as to whether or not that would be enough money. Again, there's not a perfect way to address this. And even if you've got a traditional long-term care policy, which most people don't have, that may not be enough. But I would tell you that something is better than nothing. So don't just do what most people do, which is, they stick their head in the sand and ignore the problem and ignore the possibility of a long-term care event. I had a client several months ago, Ben, tell me that they wanted to, just become a ward of the state and let them take care of her. And that's fine. But what she was talking about was qualifying for a Medicaid bed. She didn't want anything fancy, just wants to be on Medicaid and become a quote ward of the state. But she didn't want to spend down her assets to do this. And that's, that doesn't really work out in the real world. So, she's going to be in a tough spot at some point. But, there are several different ways to address long-term care in the future that we use here for clients of our firm. Asset-based long-term care is one way. And this is basically where you carve out a portion of your assets that can be used to pay for a long-term care event in the future. It can be set up to give you some type of, monthly payment or multiple of the dollar amount that you put in. And if you don't use it, that's fine. You've still got your money. And when you die, the beneficiaries get that money. Of course, you can also use life insurance in some instances to pay for long-term care. If your policy has what's called living benefits, and basically what this means is you can tap into the death benefit while you're still living, if you need it for chronic or critical illness in the future. But again, there's no perfect way to address long-term care in the future. But like I said earlier, something is better than nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Something's always better than nothing. So these are just 5 of the potential problems, again, that could exist for you financially. But if you can get ahead of these, again, as always, you'll be in much better shape. But that's what a financial advisor can help you with, can go through all these checklist of items and make sure you have them all in place and are taking care of all these things for your retirement. But if you have questions, again, for Lee and J.L. Perkins Wealth Management, start with talkwithlee.com. That is the website. You can get a meeting scheduled right there. It'll take you right to the calendar. Pick a time that works for you. Again, talkwithlee.com. And then also, Lee, just kind of quickly pointing into that book offer for anyone that is thinking about taxes, wants to kind of put a little more thought into that. Give us that breakdown one more time.
Yeah. So here we as we record this, we're at the end of October. So we've got 2 more months to do tax planning before the end of the year. And we want to try to get as much tax planning done before the calendar year flips, because you just have greater options when you're in this year. So again, if you want a copy of that book, you can text the word diffuse to 478-475-2050. Give us that address and we'll shoot you a copy of it. But also wanted to go back to some of these questions. You may not have concerns about all 5 of these, sort of potential problems that we talked about, but maybe 1 or 2 of these are a little bit, you're a little bit cloudy on what your plan is for that. And again, our whole process here, just reach out to us, go to www.talkwithlee.com and just grab 15 minutes on my calendar and we can help you talk through that and maybe just put some of those concerns into perspective, and we'll try to give you some clarity on that.
All right, very good. Well, we appreciate you listening to My Retirement Clarity. Good luck with the house, Lee. Hopefully we talk here in the next few weeks. You'll be settling in and enjoying that back patio.
Man, I sure hope so. One of these days I will. My goal is to record a podcast from the back deck overlooking the river.
Hear the water in the background? That'd be
yes, sir.
Nice and relaxing. All right, we're looking forward to it. But we appreciate you listening to this episode. Please hit subscribe on the show if you haven't already. We'd appreciate that. For Lee Perkins over at J.L. Perkins Wealth Management there in Macon, I am Ben George. Take care.
Lee Perkins here, and I want to thank you so much for tuning into the show today. If you like our podcast, we would be honored if you would share the show with others. And one great way to do that is by posting the show to your social media pages or by just telling others about it. Either way, we would really appreciate it. And of course, if you do enjoy the show, we would appreciate it if you would give us a 5-star review. And this certainly helps other people like you find our show. And if you want to learn a little more about our firm and how we help people have the best retirement they can possibly have, go check us out at www.myretirementclarity.com. There are a lot of great resources that you can access directly on the website. And of course, if you want to have a conversation with me, you can visit www.talkwithlee.com, and this will take you directly to my calendar. And there you can schedule a 15-minute phone call so I can learn a little bit more about your situation. Of course, everybody is not a great fit for our firm, but if I think we can add value and put you in a better situation, I'll let you know, and we can certainly talk about the next steps. So thanks again for tuning into the show, and we'll catch you next time.
Investment advisory services are offered by J.L. Perkins Wealth Management, a registered investment advisor and insurance agency. Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, legal, or investment advice. Always consult with a qualified tax, legal, or investment professional before taking any action.